China Watch Radio is brought to you in part by Sushi Market Sprouts on 7th in Santa Cruz and Kaito in the Capitola Mall Food Court. Treat yourself to the finest Japanese cuisine you'll find anywhere with fresh sushi to go and delicious ramen dinners. Sushi Market Sprouts and Kaito. Yum!
Tongjimen, 我们在轰轰烈烈的站起来。Hello out there, this is China Watch Radio, and we are watching China today with you. Got a whole crew here ready to roll with lots of stories, and oh my goodness, it's getting weird out there. It's getting, we've been watching China for 40 some shows now.
Has it been that many,
It's
really?
been that many, and it just keeps getting weirder and weirder and weirder and weirder. Today we see that they're running on the banks.
Yeah.
1,000 people lined up and protested not being able to get their money out of the bank. And the CCP
Violent
brought in
protests.
1,000 plainclothes thugs, and they beat them all up and hauled them all off in buses. Couldn't get their money out of the banks. So it's getting weirder and weirder and weirder. And we're trying to keep track of it for you with these credible stories that we see coming out of China. Now, so let's run through the crew and see who's got what for you. Billy, what do you got today?
Well, today I'm going to talk about China dominating the antibiotics market. And if that doesn't frighten you, nothing will.
David Welch.
We're going to continue on our reporting on venture capital investments in China and the gamble that they're taking.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah.
Jaunty up in the trees.
Well, a hacker has acquired data on 1 billion Chinese citizens. And that data is now being analyzed to figure out what the heck's really going on with Chinese demographics and economy, etc.
And if you extend that story down the road a few years, you got a pretty interesting situation shaping up. And speaking of interesting situations, Michael Olson, yours truly, will be picking up the story of Sri-Lanka and how China captured Sri-Lanka with Belt and Road.
Yeah.
That belt got tight, didn't it?
And the belt got tight. And the president went down the road. So those are the stories we're going to be picking up. We're also going to take a more in-depth look at the situation with respect to the recent assassination of Shinzo Abe in Japan, the former prime minister, and how that's affecting how the world sees what's going on over there. You've got the Chinese people, hooting and hollering in delight, and the Japanese people are pretty sad about this. So we're going to pick up that in the second half hour here. And so let's launch right into this program and get to watching China. We're going to start off here with Captain Billy Graff.
All right, let's talk about a rather frightening situation. At least I think so. You can be the judge. Global exports of antibiotics originate predominantly from communist China. This is from Martin Armstrong statistics. China is currently accounting for about 42.4% of global antibiotic exports by value. Now, by contrast, Italy, India, and Switzerland follow far behind. What I find interesting is that the United States is not really in the top echelon of pharmaceutical exports at all. For years, experts have been warning that the EU's dependence on economic supplies from abroad, especially China and India, is a problem. Think about it for a minute, and you'll realize they're right. It is a problem to have, antibiotics. Antibiotics, cure a lot of disease around the world. Various things are not curable really without a course of antibiotics, or it takes way longer to get over such maladies than if you had antibiotics. Anyway, the dependence is not only limited to antibiotics, but affects also, for many years now, a wide range of pharmaceutical products. Oh, here we go. Including cortisone. Now, we all know that cortisone is, well, it's necessary in some cases. Got to have cortisone.
Yeah.
Doctors use it a lot. Also, insulin is one of the things that we worry about.
That's right.
Okay. So anyway, as a result, I don't want to alarm you too badly, but as a result, there's now a pressing need for drugs that are specifically effective against resistant germs. Where have we heard that one before?
Oh, yeah.
Huh? So think about this for a minute. And I put this together while I was reading this last night, and it just came to me. I actually took a nap, and when I woke up from the nap, the connection had come to me. Many people believe the current outbreak of COVID-19 was caused in China, started in China, in a lab in China.
Yep.
Started in a lab here in the United States.
Then
the
moved to
laboratory of Dr. Ralph Barrick at
Okay.
the University of North Carolina.
But promulgated and escaped to the world in China.
Yeah.
That's what everybody, most of the people now that look at this believe that.
Pretty conventional
Okay.
thinking, yeah.
Well, think about this. The country that produces most of the antibiotics and other pharmaceuticals is the same country where the big bug of this century got released.
Was anybody else hesitant about using the iHome COVID test kit that came from China that was bought with our tax dollars?
I haven't seen that.
I have used it.
Yeah.
And
And you started speaking Chinese. So.
I started
Yeah,
speaking
look,
Chinese
see what
just like
happened to
that. Oh, ni hao ma.
Anyway, I didn't want to alarm you too much, but this is a story that it
Can I
popped up.
ask you a question, Billy, then
Sure.
really quickly? Why are we not manufacturing antibiotics here in the United States or in Mexico and
There you
Canada
go.
or someplace?
Well,
maybe Alaska.
I
or
believe for the
North
same
Pole.
reason that we're also not making Levi's here in large quantities, or certain car parts, or computer chips, or steel, or a lot of other things, because we don't have to anymore. We can get it made cheaper in China. The problem is, here's the big problem. Do we really want our pharmaceuticals and our antibiotics produced in a country where there is very little oversight when it comes to, say contamination?
Well, Billy,
or-
I was just going to ask you about that, Billy. When there's, I'm wondering if a lot of companies aren't offshoring this because, every now and then they do run into issues with contamination and manufacturing.
That's
and
exactly
it's very
right.
embarrassing, and I
Sure.
bet none of that comes to light.
Well,
That's right.
look,
It's all very-
it's happened in our country. Look at
The baby formula recently.
baby formula. There you go. That's a
well,
great example.
The interesting thing about that, though, is just a minor bacterial contamination.
Well,
of
it
the-
depends who you talk to, though.
Of the facility in Sturgis, Michigan, and all of a sudden the nation is without baby food. I've seen video of an antibiotic factory in India. The downstream, it was a complete disaster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what we do here in the United States is take our dirty industries, we ship them offshore to someplace else, and we buy cheap food, and we feel good about ourselves because we're...
Well, not a few years ago, I had a small medical procedure, and I was, given a small quantity of a painkiller, and I took it. And it's like it didn't do anything. So and I looked at the label; it was made in India, and so I contacted the hospital, and I said, "Apologies," and they got me from another source. The same stuff, same quantity,
And it did something.
And it did something. But so it got me thinking, like, what are the dosage levels like coming off those plants?
who measures?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John T.
I was just going to say, just in the interest of keeping us all honest, we're talking about antibiotics specifically. With regards to pharmaceuticals, China's way down the list of exporters of pharmaceuticals. Germany's number one, Switzerland number two, the United States number three. Ireland exports more pharmaceuticals
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
China by about 3 times.
That's true.
It's not pharmaceuticals; it's antibiotics specifically.
Well, and thank you for keeping us honest on that. But the whole thought that look, I stepped on rusty nails when I was a kid. I've had more tetanus shots than Carter's got liver pills, But I mean, every once in a while I would, have to have some antibiotics when I was a kid because I lived on a ranch and, God knows what what I stepped on before I stepped on a nail, And I just, it scares me.
Okay, David Welch, you're up.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about BlackRock and some of the firms that have been investing overseas in China, and this is actually, unfortunately, it's like a tumbleweed or a snowball rolling downhill. It's actually gaining momentum in size and speed. And the U.S. government, go ahead.
The what is rolling down?
The investments to
so
China's
we're spending
venture
more.
capital.
We're investing
more and more of our capital.
Yeah.
And so the crux of this is the U.S. government has renewed and refreshed its warnings recently to American industry. Along with the Europeans in concert, also stating that to be leery and they want to send a clear message that the economies of the U.S. and China are disentangling and investments should be redirected accordingly, is the advice that they've been given.
That's a nice way of saying don't do it.
Exactly.
Now, go ahead.
This admonition is coming from a variety of intelligence agencies, including the FBI and also MI5, who actually issued a joint warning in this regard, which I thought was really interesting. And then furthermore, Christopher Wray came out directly and said, he didn't mince words, he said, the Chinese government is set on stealing your technology. Whatever it makes your industry tick, and use it to undercut you and dominate your market.
That's exactly what they do. Couldn't have said it any better myself. So the question is, why are they investing more money in China?
Well, here's the thing that's really interesting. They're bowling right ahead anyway. So a Sequoia Capital, China Fund, just raised $9 billion to fuel new funds for China, which I thought was really interesting. The driver was that they think the U.S. economy is shrinking right now. We've got some negative growth, and they suspect that China is going to be growing, and it's going to be growing at a faster rate. And what they're pointing to is that the exports from China to the United States have actually been growing over the last few years through the COVID period, pointing to a manufacturing industrial base that's going to be more robust than our economy. And so they're making that bet. They're making that gamble that they won't steal as much as they make, or that they make more than they get stolen from, or something. I don't know what the formula is. But here's the part I found really scary. The unbridled run for greed. It is the fund is 50% oversubscribed. So they rejected half the investors who wanted to come in. And these were American pension funds.
Yeah, there you go.
These were investment firms. I mean, all the things that Billy and a team here have been reporting on. But that total would have been, if they had capped it at $9 billion, it would have run all the way out to $12 billion of our money.
Was it Everett Dirksen that said $1 billion here, $1 billion there? Pretty soon we're talking about real money?
No, it was Mark Twain. No, I'm just kidding.
So just kind of summing this up, investors are betting that we're not going to break ties with China, that there isn't going to be a war or some type of an altercation with Taiwan, that their economy is going to grow, the Chinese economy is going to grow, ours is going to continue to contract, and that they're going to be able to thread this needle and make lots of money for their investors, their clients, their pensions funds, and their other investors.
Well, and also China's paying a lot of money in interest payments too. So you get, 10%? If you buy bonds on Chinese real estate or something like that, but those bonds are going belly up too. That's going to be an interesting bet.
Well, keep in mind, every investment is into the communist government of China.
It's all owned by the Chinese.
That's right. What's fascinating, the old saying, don't pay attention to what I'm saying, look at what I'm doing.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
Just wrapping this up, the Biden administration is also considering rolling back the Trump-era tariffs against China to combat inflation. Those tariffs were put in because of some of this behavior. Mm-hmm. So you have the administration at one point saying, don't invest because you can probably get your technology stolen. On the other side, they're actually enabling a
the
capability.
Investment.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
What's that, Jonty?
Oh, I was just going to ask who on this panel would feel
Make the
comfortable
bet.
with your pension funds being
Not me.
invested in China.
Not me.
Nope.
Well, okay, that's 4.
It's unanimous.
But that those people, the money that's going into these funds That's pension money funds.
Yes.
That's not somebody betting their own money.
Well,
That's people-
wait,
that's-
though. Essentially, they are betting their retirement.
There are people like Larry Fink bundling all kinds of pension fund money and saying, where can I get the best return for it? Now, if it all goes belly up, well, sorry.
Yeah.
I've got my palace in
Do you
Switzerland.
folks remember the city of Stockton, California?
Yep.
There you go.
Their pension fund for their firefighters and their police officers went away.
Yep.
Yeah. John T., you're up.
This is actually, I think, probably one of the most underreported stories of this current time that we're in. Although I got to say, there's so much going on in the world that it's really hard to keep up. But this is something everyone's going to overlook and not understand the true gravity of. There's a report in The Guardian about how a hacker managed to hack into the police database for Shanghai, but within this database, it actually contains basically the info on all the Chinese. They're talking about 1 billion Chinese citizens. And the funny thing is, if you have this authoritarian digital control mechanism and you keep a lot of data on everybody, well, the funny thing is it makes it kind of easy to steal that data. And that's apparently what's happened here. It's an enormous amount of information. And I ended up watching Jennifer Zhang do a fantastic report on it on YouTube. I invite the audience to go to China Watch Radio and have a look at the Know Before the Show page for the show. We've got Jennifer's video up there. She's a fantastic journalist, by the way. There's intelligence departments and researchers around the world now who are combing this data. For years, everyone's been speculating about what are the real numbers in China's economy? What are the real demographics? We now have the ability to actually figure that out. We have a snapshot in time of where China really was on this date. And there's a very interesting demographer, Yi Fuxiang, who's a senior scientist at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He's the author of the book Big Country with an Empty Nest. And he's already been pouring through this data. And what he's saying is that China's birth rate was declining after 1990. China's been saying that it didn't start declining until 2011. The current population of China is not $1.41 billion, as the CCP asserts. It's actually less than 1.28 billion, based on this data. And that negative population growth began in 2018. The CCP is saying negative population growth will start in 2031. So China's been shrinking for 4 years already with regards to their population. Moreover, and I think that this is really just as important as those sort of big numbers, is the birth rate is off a cliff in China right now. They're way below replacement rate. And there's some real interesting stuff in this data. They're actually breaking out a chart of purchases of baby-related items, strollers and teething things, and whatever you need when you have a baby. And they were showing this chart of these very telling items, and how over the last maybe 4 or 5 years, it has gone from I would say it's down, based on the chart they were showing, it's down to about 30% of what it was.
Wow.
John T., quick question. How much of that may be attributed to COVID? Because I think births were also down in the West over the last couple, 3 years.
Well, wait a minute, though. They're stuck
was
in the house together.
I'm talking 5 years, so it's not. It's 2018. We didn't have the coronavirus.
Yeah, I don't think that that doesn't make sense to me at all. If you're stuck in the house together, what else are you going to do?
Yeah.
So, John T., is this kind of like Hunter Biden's laptop?
This is Hunter Biden's laptop for the CCP writ large. So there's some speculation. Good question, Olson. There's some speculation that this could be an intentional leak meant to embarrass Xi.
I was thinking that myself.
But prior to his attempt at re-election.
Boy, how big a thumb drive would that have to be to have 1 billion people's information on it?
I think it was 28 terabytes,
Wow.
if I recall correctly.
Wow.
So that's a lot. Yeah.
Well, good. I'm going to have a couple of minutes here left. I'm going to pick up the story of Sri Lanka. I'm sure anybody out there who's been watching television or checking the internet news feeds has seen the storming of the palace, the presidential palace
Unbelievable.
in Colombo, Sri Lanka. We've seen the crowds rushing in and stealing the president's food and liquor and swimming in his pool and fortunately, I didn't see any
January
guillotines, but it was a
No
genuine.
nooses hanging from gallows
nooses,
outside of
yeah.
the palace there?
So the president has resigned by email from the Maldives. So
Yeah, he got out of
Distance,
Dodge.
he's taken off. So what in the heck happened to Sri Lanka, which was a middle-class country?
Yep.
They're about the size of California's population. Everybody was doing good, but they were doing it on borrowed money, which sounds familiar, does it not?
Eventually, the credit card is due.
The credit, yes, and the credit card came due. But the big borrowing was between Sri Lanka and China. And Sri Lanka borrowed heavily to buy into China's Belt and Road projects, including a highway straight into Sri Lanka. But its big deal was the port. Now, of course, these investments
familiar.
have been made. Sri Lanka is $50 billion in the hole. It has no foreign currency. That means it can't buy anything, including fertilizer for the food. It can't buy food anymore. It can't buy paper for schools. Everything is shutting down in Sri Lanka because there is no money. Now, what's going to happen is that if it can't make the $73 million of, I don't know,
Interest payments
a month or a day or a second or whatever, that China then takes over the equity in the projects it built for Sri Lanka.
We've seen the skip on this record before.
It sounds to me like the Solomon Islands, but I could be wrong.
It's exactly what they're doing throughout the developing world. Now, the IMF does lend money too, but some we do not confiscate the real estate and the properties. So in essence, China is doing what it has done to the United States, which is elite capture. They go to the presidents of these countries. They say, here's $10 million for you to buy into our Belt and Road. Once the president gets the cash in the Swiss bank, signs on the dotted lines.
He goes to the Maldives.
Secured with the deed of the local port or whatever.
So those are the stories we have for you today, and we look forward to discussing Japan when we come back from this break.
And I also put one more story into the mix here. I handed it to Michael Olson. It's an interesting thing about what we talked about last week about ships sailing, United States vessels moving through shipping lanes to keep the shipping lanes open.
Oh, I can't wait to hear that.
Yeah. So anyway,
Right back.
we'll be
Stay
right back.
tuned.
If you're hungry with a fresh, prepared, twice daily grab-and-go sushi you'll find waiting for you at Sushi Market Sprouts, 2 blocks from the beach at 300 7th Avenue in Santa Cruz. Fresh, delicious, and oh so good.
Hello, I'm Junko, and I look forward to serving you at the Sushi Market Sprouts.
We're headed for the warmest weather of the year. I'm Charles Friedman. Before you turn on that air conditioner up to max, give a thought to the safety of all the electrical circuits that keep you cool. Best way to check on the safety of your electrical circuits is with the help of Chris Jensen and the staff at JM Electric. Chris, what should we be watching out for?
Thanks, Charles. It is really important to be mindful of the electrical circuits that power air conditioners. Any electrical leak from these circuits is a real fire danger. You may not be able to see the electricity leaking from the circuits behind your walls, but JM Electric's state-of-the-art testing equipment can find them. And JM Electric is happy to help folks out with a free home assessment to see if the current safe testing service is right for your home. Give us a call at 422-7819.
Go straight to jmelectric.com and take the home electric safety test. After you answer 12 yes or no questions, you'll have a good idea about how safe to feel. If you don't feel safe, call JM Electric and ask for a free current safe home assessment. That's JM Electric at 422-7819. You'll sleep well at night.
Primo Roofing is your full-service roofing company. They not only replace roofs, but maintain and preserve aging roofs with an entire division dedicated to postponing costly roof replacement. Their maintenance division specializes in pressure washing, coating and sealing, mold and mildew removal, gutter cleaning and replacement, preventative maintenance, and repairs. Maintenance is key to long roof life. Are you ready to protect your roof? Call Primo Roofing today, working to extend and preserve the life of your roof.
Hey guys, it's Rob Carson on KSCO. Yeah, a special gift from me to you. If you want to check out, we've made it a lot bigger. It's called the Rob Carson Show. We have a lot of stuff to get on the show, not only the great guests that we have, but also the great satire that you hear on the show. And we have seen some good news and some bad news as far as the country is concerned, as well as my commentary. So if you want to check that out, just go to KSCO.
Don't miss the Rob Carson Show, 9 to noon, right here on KSCO.
Hi, this is Hedva. Tune in every Thursday night at 9 for Hear It Now on KSCO. What is the it in Hear It Now? It's life. Life after an abortion. Listen to what my guests have to say. Call in. Be a part of the conversation. That's Hear It Now, Thursdays at 9 on KSCO, the radio heart of Santa Cruz.
Uh-oh, Brad's buzzed.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he's starting with the whoops. Good thing is, he knows when he's buzzed.
Know your buzzed warning signs? Call for a ride when it's time to go home. Buzz driving is drunk driving. A message from NHTSA and the Ad Council.
Before we get started with our discussion here, just a reminder, our buddy Jonty, who's up in the woods, does a lot of work. He puts all of the articles we're talking about on the website, ChinaWatchRadio.com. It's a section each week that we want you to take a look at. And even if you can't look at it before the show, if you want to check it out during the show, that's ChinaWatchRadio.com.
And the reason you should go there is that's where you get the information.
Yep.
And then you'll be well armed. And when we make these crazy statements, you'll be able to pick up your phone, call 479-1080, and say, look here, bub. What are you talking about?
You know what I really love about ChinaWatchRadio.com is the beautiful work that Jonty does in curating content, and he's got just a robust, way more than we talk about here on the show, but he kind of gets it distilled down so you can digest it easily and read it easily. And don't forget to sign up for the newsletter as well, because you're not going to get spammed. We don't sell your email. You get one, I think, email a week that is very crisp and concise with the top articles going on in China. So I encourage
you can click.
You can click and drill through it and read for yourself at your leisure.
That way you don't have to watch TV or waste your time in the newspapers.
ChinaWatchRadio.com.
Yeah, ChinaWatchRadio.com. So, we went through a few items today. This is, as we say, China Watch Radio. We've got the crew here. We have Billy Graff on the controls. We have John T. McCollier. He's up in the woods somewhere. Nobody really knows. I think
it's a secret location.
Yeah. It used to belong to the Symbionese Liberation Army. David Welch is with us. Michael Olson, of course, Susan. Simon is somewhere.
She's in charge of the transmitter right now.
She's in charge of the transmitter right now. And so we have the whole crew here. We look forward to a great conversation today. Now, we're going to pick up the
horrible story in Japan.
Yeah, the recent assassination of Shinzo Abe.
Olson, sorry to interrupt you. Before we move on to that, there's something that I really feel we need to mention about the Sri-Lanka situation, or else we're not doing the story justice.
No, we're not.
Yes, there's the debt trap situation going on with the CCP's Belt and Road program, but the other side of the Sri Lanka coin is they have been the darling of the World Economic Forum,
the ESG.
Well, yeah, the WEF, who are big fans of the ESG score. So the Klaus Schwab, Davos crew has been boasting. The World Economic Forum posted an article on their website in 2018 saying that we're going to make Sri Lanka extremely wealthy. I think they've taken that article down, actually.
I would think
so. It's amazing how they're scrubbing internet news stories really quick. Really quickly, John T., before you go on with that, ESG, for those of you out there who haven't heard of it before or know what it means, I think it's environment, what's the S stand for?
Social.
And then G for government. So it's like a social credit system that the Chinese Communist Party set up to govern its citizens with. So if you do something wrong, we're going to pull the plug on you. And so the ESG is how the elites up there in the castles in Switzerland judge a country. And so they looked at Sri Lanka and they said, here is a poor country that we're going to make rich. And how were they going to do that, John T?
Well, they were going to do that by doing really bizarre things like banning nitrogen fertilizers.
Yeah.
Oh, like the Netherlands.
It's a long list. And I should mention about ESG, it's kind of a Bill Gates brainchild to an extent. He's a bit behind it. And it's a bit ironic because Elon Musk has been very critical of it. Tesla, which makes electric cars, has a much lower ESG score than Exxon. And as I mentioned, there's Bill Gates' money behind the thing, and I think Microsoft is the highest scoring corporation. I'm not sure about that. You might have to double check, but it's one of the highest scoring. So there's this black box wherein someone decides your company's ESG score, and you don't really get to know what's going on. And then they present the results, which then go on to affect investment dollars because people want their money in ESG companies. Wall Street's been all about the ESG thing, and that's now falling apart. It's falling apart in Holland. It's falling apart in Germany, Albania. But Sri Lanka is the absolute tip of the iceberg here.
Let's follow that up, John T., because they have a great ESG score. The
number 6 in the entire
global elite is going to make them fabulously rich because they have a high ESG score. So all of these rich people lend them money, right? And so that's how Sri Lanka developed a rich middle class, is by all of this free money that was flowing into the country. And then it all came due.
It sounds like communism to me.
It's like Margaret Thatcher quote, right? I mean, socialism is great until you run out of other people's money.
There you go.
Or if you're living in LA against your means or beyond your means until the credit card is due.
The most astute observation that I've heard on this comes from Neil Oliver, a Scottish commentator, who said that he believes that this is a plan to take away farmers' land. You create these environmental rules, which are totally unintuitive to any farmer. It's going to drive them out of business. They're talking about 30% of the farmland in the Netherlands being bought off as a result of the government's policies. So I don't know what the scenario is in Sri Lanka. I imagine you're much more dire if you're a farmer there.
Yeah, I might even go just a little step further and say it's really people who are working independently, right? Farmers is a huge block of independent laborers and owners of businesses.
Great point.
You look at the long-haul truckers in the United States, how they've been decimated with the clean diesel laws, and you have to be part of a union. You can't drive into the port, right, to pick up cargo. It's been...
Anybody who is not a part of the Chinese Communist Party is out.
Exactly. Yes,
We're going to starve you out. What Johnny talked about, the environmental rules being enforced on Sri Lanka, it's happening here.
Oh, it's happening around the world, not just here.
So there's been a big push. Joe Biden himself says we're going to get rid of fossil fuels. It was unequivocal. It's gone. Now, the idea is that we'll grow our food with organic technologies. Now, I've been advocating for organic technologies forever.
So have I, by the way.
And the
Back to the Future.
technologies work really well with space-intensive agriculture close to a city.
Yeah.
When you're growing 10,000 acres of soy or something like that,
Corn,
it's a different story, right? Now, we city people, it's so easy for us to get fed. We get hungry, we take the second right and go through the drive-through. And somebody stuffs a hamburger in our mouths and we're fed. Done.
Yeah.
It's easy. But what we don't really know is that every step along the way in the food chain is powered by diesel.
Yep.
yes, it is.
Diesel is what prepares the land for planting. Diesel is what plants the seeds. Diesel is what protects the crops from pests and insects. Diesel is how you harvest a crop. Diesel is how you haul the crop
the crop.
And process it.
Diesel is how you process it. Diesel is how you get it from the processor to the grocery store. Diesel, or gasoline, I should say, is how it gets from every step along the way is powered by diesel.
Or petroleum.
Petroleum. When we take petroleum out of the equation really quickly,
Can I just
those
say this?
carrots are going to cost $100 a piece.
Well, the thing about farming, and I can tell you this from a lifetime of experience. Trust me, they can't make an electric tractor that will work as long as you need it to work.
In the breadth of weather and temperature and
That's
climate.
right.
Yeah.
You can't. The battery would be too huge.
Yeah. We think we're eating food, but we're really eating diesel.
So from somebody who's worked at big corporate and manufacturers, the whole ESG calculation was really interesting. I saw people play all kinds of interesting games trying to jack their environmental scores up. So I'll give you an example, and a lot of it's pretty self-serving. It's from a platitude perspective, it sounds just really warm and fuzzy and wonderful, but in execution, it's really a little bit meh.
Sure.
A good example is there was a company, I won't mention their name, but they had a really successful product. I guarantee all of us have probably had this product in our homes, and it had a consumable element to it. Now, the cartridge. The cartridge would empty, and you'd throw it in a landfill. Well, this was really bad because there was billions of these things being thrown away. So they included a process to mail it back to them to be recycled.
I know the product.
But nobody, of course, would ever
do it. Nobody ever did it.
It was like 2%, right, would take the time to mail the thing back.
They took a lot of credit.
But they got all the ESG credit as if they had recycled the entire batch.
Yeah. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. And you know what? Yeah. It is a great example. Yeah.
Well, so that takes us back to the essential core of Chinese Communist Party and its political correctness. Because as you look at the history of the Chinese Communist Party, what was politically correct one day would be politically incorrect the next day. One day you could be head of the committee, the next day you could be the headless head of the committee.
Yeah.
And there was no rule of law, so it was
no logic, and also no logic behind the change.
So it was all personality driven.
Yeah. Gee, that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you really bring up an interesting perspective, Michael, because of the sort of authoritarian nature of things like the Kill the Sparrows campaign. The various instances where Chinese top-down, I should say CCP top-down policy caused an absolute wreck of things, all kinds of knock-on effects. We now have this non-elected body, the World Economic Forum, who's making these top-down decisions, which, I mean, look, it's one thing to go through the process of a transition to alternate energy sources. It's something else to abruptly hit the switch and knowing statistically that you're going to drive a huge bunch of folks off their land,
unless
and a
that's
huge
what
bunch
your
of people
objective
out of their
is.
business. Yeah, I know that's one of the tricks here. I believe one of the big picture tricks is don't look at what people are telling you that they're doing. Don't look at what they say they're trying to do. Look at the effects.
Look at what they're doing exactly.
Well, it's like the example we had earlier where, Biden was talking about don't invest in China, but yet he's going to reduce their tariffs.
Yeah. There you
What is
go.
that going to cost?
Yeah.
Investment in China.
Yeah.
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 And you know, I think one of the things we should consider, though, is the fact that perception is almost everything. I hate to put it that way, but it's true. How things are perceived is extremely important to the way companies and governments operate.
And that takes us to the power
There you
of
go.
the press, of who controls
There you
the
go.
press. When you control the press, you control the perception.
And when you get to the point where you're controlling the press completely, that's propaganda.
Or in some cases where the press is so like-minded that they seem to somehow fly in
Same
formation
thing.
with you. Right?
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
Same thing.
Well, how's this for an insider trading scheme? You go and you have a meeting with the president in the Oval Office. And in that meeting, you discuss how things are going with inflation. And the president confides in you that within the next 2 months, he's definitely going to have to pull the plug on the tariffs against China. You then turn around and goes, thank you very much for that info. And you dump a whole bunch of money into the Chinese stock market, knowing that it's going to skyrocket the day that those tariffs get lifted.
And there's David's story for the day, right there in a nutshell.
Yep.
Well, as always, Jonty does bring it home for us.
So who does President Joe Biden belong to? And I've been making the point for a good part of a year that I believe he is a wholly owned subsidiary of the Chinese Communist Party.
Or at least his handlers are.
You know, unfortunately, I have to say that not only does it look that way here in this country, but there are a plethora of other countries around the world where this same scenario seems to be taking place.
Well, I know exactly who he belongs to. He belongs to the teleprompter.
Even the
When available.
Yeah.
You know,
can
that
process
was one of the most unfortunate presidential gaffes I've ever witnessed, where he actually read the instructions written on the teleprompter out loud.
Yeah. Yep.
I felt
Russell
bad.
Brand made me laugh so hard this morning. He did a fantastic bit on that, where he starts talking about he's acting out as though he's Biden. Biden's confused as to whether he should sniff a little kid's head or read from the teleprompter, or should I read the kid's head and sniff the teleprompter? I don't know. It was really funny.
Well, you know, it would be funny, except that it's what was it I said yesterday?
Well,
I was telling the boys, I think Joe Biden. He appears to me that Joe Biden is the pilot of Malaysia 370.
And for those of you that don't remember,
and we are the passengers.
Yeah, if you don't remember that Malaysian flight, that's the one that the pilot decided he wanted to end it all, and so he just put the
And he
rudder down
disappeared.
and went straight into the ocean.
Well, we don't know.
Well, look, you guys have slightly more gray hairs than I do.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate the observation there, Dante.
Has there ever been a more critical time to have a at least cogent person in the Oval Office in your lifetimes?
You know, one of the
Yes,
things...
it would have been the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Yes,
Yeah.
the
So
Cuban
that's how
Missile
far
Crisis.
back we have to go, huh?
Well, you know, I suspect that one of those times might have been, I think probably Kennedy operated in a really good way during that crisis. But, you know, that illustrates my point. Kennedy had a bunch of really
Razor sharp guys.
The people around him were quite talented at what they did.
Yeah.
Even his brother.
You know that I just read where, with respect to the economy. Oops.
Uh-oh, Michael lost his voice. Anyway, we don't seem to have that at the moment. Several of our last presidents have ignored some of their advisors.
Too, Billy, coming out of the Second World War, everybody learned how to work together.
Yes.
Yeah.
And pull together for an
Yes.
objective.
That was
Yes.
it. So what I read was that of Biden's advisors working on the economy, 0% of them have any experience working on the economy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're all apparatchiks.
And you know what? That's not I will just say this. A couple of years ago, here in California, we had a situation where the legislature decided that they didn't like the guy who was in charge of the agricultural committees. And that person, Abel Maldonado, was the only member of the state government that had ever worked in agriculture, and so they got rid of him. And they put in somebody who knew nothing at all about agriculture into that position as the head agricultural guy on the committee.
Well, it's like the CCP.
And so the
This sounds like the CCP.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Make the janitors the surgeons are janitors.
So the idea that this is a situation that happens only at the the higher government levels. No, it happens in California. It happens everywhere. This is a thing that can happen anywhere.
Well, who's in charge of transportation during the biggest supply chain shock ever? It's a guy named Pete Buttigieg, who I affectionately refer to as Buddy.
Who went on a 6-week parental leave in the heap of the crisis.
Well, I mean, he has some qualifications in Navy intelligence. The guy's like a spook or something.
And
he
ran a city government for a while. Okay.
Broken down Gary, Indiana.
He's definitely not transportation secretary material.
The objective is really not to fix anything. I mean, do you really think that these people are trying to fix something?
Look. Well, he had the racist highways, right?
Well, here's
they're going to make them.
Yeah. You know who I would put in charge of transportation in this country right now? The guy who's in charge of transportation for Walmart.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So that ain't going to happen. So what is the objective then? If the objective is not to fix things,
exactly.
So you have Pete running the transportation system of the country, and he's building a racist highway, or
he's trying to clean up the racist highways.
Tear one down.
Yeah,
he's trying to tear down the racist highway.
And he's got a couple of racist bridges that he named also.
Okay, so he's going to dismantle the racist highway.
Yeah. But
ladies and gentlemen, we're in deep doo-doo.
Actually, it's okay because he's got Kamala to back him up.
Right. Well, Sagar and Jetty of The Rising did a fantastic report this morning on TikTok, wherein he describes how absolutely strange it is that we allow this massive Chinese company to have sway over this social media organization that's by far the most popular thing amongst our youth. Meanwhile, all of our big tech companies aren't allowed in China because, hey, we might manipulate their population. And the TikTok in the U.S. is altered. The TikTok in China is all about how it's great to get good math scores. And the TikTok in the U.S. is all about the extreme
transgenderism,
far end of wokeness. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, speaking of our youth for just a moment here, I remember when it was promoted and it was looked favorably upon getting good math scores. So you could get it later on in life. You had the skills to get a good job, and it plays out in Silicon Valley now. Those of you who can, get your way around a math calculator can do pretty well. Yeah. If you don't know anything about math, you're not going to work in the Silicon Valley.
Well, fellow crewmates, we really blew it because we haven't talked a thing about Shinzo Abe and his Abe.
Well,
close.
Well,
and then
what a great leader!
What a great leader! So, did the Chinese Communist Party take him out?
That is a big story in Japan.
Yeah,
that theory is.
What do you think? We have like 3 minutes left.
That theory is floating heavily in the Japanese press.
Mm-hmm. I find
I don't know if that's true, but if it is true, that's scary.
Well, one thing that is definitely the case is that there is a variety of celebration within China. Yep. There are people going around with "Yay, Shinzo's dead" T-shirts. There are people having disco dance parties where they're putting up, video of Shinzo getting shot. It's they see it as a really great thing in most of China. They've been pretty well
grotesque.
pretty well propagandized against Japan over the last couple decades. Although
ever
there's
since
more to
World
this
War
story.
II. Excuse
There's
me.
more
Well,
to-
actually, prior to that.
Yeah. You know
yeah.
what leads me to think that it may well have been true that the CCP was behind it was the useful idiot that did it.
Well, yeah.
That and the other thing, Michael, I think what I look at too is the weapon he used.
Yes, that was
very,
it. Yes,
it's a very clever homemade shotgun. But it took some technical merit and skill to put that together and design it.
And he's the perfect stooge to do it. You know, you find the perfect stooge, which I think is what there's a name for those people that you
Useful idiots.
No, that you plant to do something to start something. My wife knows the name, but I forgot it. But it just seems like if you were going to do it,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
if you were going to do it,
He's a good instigator.
that would be the way to do it.
And you know, the impotence, the thought behind the idea that China and Japan have had animosity goes way back.
Yes, it does.
It goes way back.
Way back.
Way back. They just, the two countries just have never gotten along.
Well, there's been animosity between the Koreas, Japan, and China as well. So it's been kind of a tough neighborhood where they've gotten along pretty well in the last few years. Well, we've been sitting there.
Well, that's the reason, is we're there.
Yeah.
Well, I think when we come back from the break, we should really develop the character of Shinzo Abe in terms of what role he played within the Chinese government. And I find him actually a lot more complex a character than a sort of initial reading will allow.
Well, John T., why don't you plan on painting that picture and do that as we open up the phone lines, because the second hour of China Watch Radio is open field for everybody to pick up their phone and let us know what they think about our relationship with China. How do you see this shaking out? Is it looking good?
Depends on your point of view, but not to me.
Would you bet your family's fortune on bonds in a Chinese skyscraper?
Is China slowly pulling us inside out like they did Sri Lanka?
Ooh.
You know,
that's a good question. One more time.
Is China pulling us inside out like they did Sri Lanka?
Capturing the elite, capturing the country,
And
making
capturing the
everybody
economy.
happy as they suck us dry. This is China Watch Radio. The crew's all here. Billy Graff, John D. Collier, David Welch, Susan Simon is somewhere, Michael Olson, and most especially you.
479-1080 is the telephone number to pick up and dial. We'll take your calls next hour following the news.
Can't wait.
It's coming up on 3 o'clock. This is AM 1080 KSCO Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey. Stay tuned for one more hour of China Watch Radio. And that's 26 degrees centigrade. And on that note, we'll let you know that it's time now for hour number 2 of China Watch Radio.
China Watch Radio is brought to you in part by Sushi Market Sprouts on 7th in Santa Cruz and Kaito in the Capitola Mall Food Court. Treat yourself to the finest Japanese cuisine you'll find anywhere with fresh sushi to go and delicious ramen dinners. Sushi Market Sprouts and Kaito. Yum!
Hao Pengyo Man, Ni Hao Ma, Woman Hen Hao. Welcome to the second hour of China Watch Radio today. It is the 14th day of July, a beautiful summer day in Santa Cruz, California, and we're keeping an eye on that country across the pond from us, the big pond, the Pacific Ocean. I often thought in my years of studying China that we're kind of like looking at them into a mirror of sorts. You know, we look at China and we kind of look. It looks like us, only with a 9,000-year history, and so there's a significant difference there. And very, very trying times for both of our countries, scary times. And so we're keeping an eye on things and trying to figure out what's going on. And we're trying to do so with your help. Today is the second half of the show is always open to you. And so we're going to go to you as soon as we have a quick thumbnail picture of the former Prime Minister of Japan, courtesy of Jaunty. So pick up your phone and join us. We have Mary on the line. We're going to pick her up in a minute. We're at 831-479-1080. This is China Watch Radio. And here is Jaunty up in the trees to tell us about Shinzo Abe.
Well, now, one of my strategies when I'm trying to discern what's going on with any kind of geopolitical issue is to get opposing voices and to see different perspectives. And I found a very interesting little bit on a website called moonofalabama.org, which is actually a fascinating website in and of itself, very contrarian to the sort of contemporary zeitgeist. And there was a piece in there about Shinzo Abe's revisionism, suggesting that, let me just describe this event that happened. It actually happened twice, I believe. But in September of 2020, Abe visited the shrine, the Yakusuni Shrine. The Yakusuni Shrine has buried with honors some 14 Japanese wartime leaders who were convicted as war criminals by an Allied tribunal. This visit was a political statement, and it, of course, upset China, but it also upset South Korea. I think that should give us some pause. The South Korean Foreign Ministry released a statement at the time saying that they had deep concern and regret that this had happened. So let me just, I just want to read a quick excerpt from Peter Lee of the China Threat Report. He describes Abe as Japan's Dick Cheney. Here goes. The core of Abe's historical revisionism is not just that the bandit-infested territories of China and Korea demanded Japanese tutelage in the 1930s and 1940s, but also that the Japanese Empire was leading the fight of the oppressed peoples of Asia against British colonialism and American imperialism. In other words, the real war crime of World War II was U.S. aggression against Japan. The United States and its pretensions to moral superiority over Japan, as well as China and Korea's presumptuous claims to virtuous victimhood, were a target of Abe's Yakusuni visit. He's intimating that this visit was a way of expressing all of these historical revisionist ideas.
Wait a minute. Did Abe ever say anything to that effect?
Very curious about what Abe actually said with regards to all of that. So I don't have the full story, but one of the ideas here is that Japan is wanting to be more independent, and they've been kind of a part of the U.S. sphere since the Second World War, since MacArthur went over there and wrote their constitution. So Abe was somebody who wanted to move Japan into a more independent situation. He was actually very close with Russia. He met with Putin some 27 times. It's entirely possible, and I don't have the evidence, but it's entirely possible that we could have a future world wherein Japan is making its own decisions and doesn't want us sort of controlling it through our embassy.
I've read very much the same material about Shinzo Abe. The fact that he was very pro-Japanese military. He wanted to beef up the Japanese military and eventually curtail the amount of American forces in Okinawa.
Yeah. Also, too, he had worked, I think, to resolve a number of issues with South Korea. There was a trade war that went on with South Korea around the 1965 treaty. But I think they had that resolved. A lot of the meetings he had with Russia were around the disputed islands that were controlled by Japan that Russia stole as a war prize right after the bombs were dropped on the country. And so there's still contention over some of the ownership of that property. What's really I find interesting about Abe is that much like Clinton, our President Clinton, he was the first prime minister who was elected who was born post-war. And I think that, and I can see with Clinton as well.
But his grandfather and his father
were serving prime ministers.
Were serving prime ministers.
They were. So he had the gene in the family. I mean, there clearly is a leadership gene in the family. But I think to the points you guys were making about him wanting to, kind of grow the stature of Japan independently, it's part of, I think, that fresh thinking of somebody who'd be born after the war and growing up in the aftermath of Reconstruction.
Yeah, how do we rebuild this country? Having been in Japan not too long after World War II ended, you could see in the people's face that they really wanted a new country.
They did.
I mean,
I was there years later. 1975, I went to Japan, and it was a strikingly modern place.
Mm-hmm.
Amazingly modern.
And clean.
Clean, but sort of had some soot.
Yeah.
But an amazing place, an amazing country.
Yeah, totally.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it's time to go to the phones, and we'd love to hear what you have to think about the stories that we put on the table for you today, or any other ones that you would care to bring up. And please feel free to disagree with us. We love to have people disagree with us.
We disagree with each other.
Yeah.
Should we do just a quick recap?
Sure.
Yeah. So the story I brought to the table was Chinese venture capital gamble. As U.S. and Western nations warn that we should be slowing investment in China as the economies are disengaging, venture firms are plowing ahead anyway with investment in Chinese companies.
Oh. And I talked a little bit about how China has used the Belt and Road projects to essentially pull Sri-Lanka, what did you say, inside out?
Yes.
And essentially bankrupted Sri-Lanka. Sri-Lanka cannot buy food now, nor paper for children's schools. Totally bankrupt. And the big port that they borrowed money to build now belongs to China.
In the subtext, did I hear you say Chinese Navy base?
There you go.
Well, that's what they seem to want to do around the world.
There you go, Billy.
All right, so then I talked about, I started the show out in the first hour talking about the fact that China dominates the market of antibiotics around the world to the tune of 42.4% domination. The next closest country, believe it or not, is Italy with 10%. So,
and Jaunty?
Well, probably the biggest data breach hack in history that recently happened, and it's essentially all the data on Chinese citizens, 1 billion Chinese citizens, and that data is now being poured over by intelligence departments and researchers all over the world. We're going to find out a heck of a lot more about the real demographic and economic status of China in the very near future.
That's a lot of data on 1 billion people.
There you go.
All right,
the phones, Billy Graff.
All right, let's bring Mary on. She's been waiting through our first couple of minutes of the second hour. Mary,
479-1080.
You're on China Watch Radio.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. It's always good to listen to you. My point is this. All you have to do is follow the money. It doesn't matter whether it's President Biden or China. It does not matter. Follow the money. So why is China shutting down certain parts of its country? Shanghai. It's a wealthy, intellectual portion of the country. Shut it down with 2 cases of COVID. Shut their doors, bolt them down, don't let them out. It's because there's a run on the banks.
Oh, that's an interesting angle.
Ooh.
Oh, Mary, I like that. You've got a suspicious mind. I like this.
So would you elaborate, please?
Listen, follow the money. It's the simplest way to get to the ways and the means of what's going on, whether it's the elite parasites of this country or the communist parasites of another. Follow the money.
Okay, but elaborate on what you said then about the bank run, because that's a pretty fascinating statement. Are you suggesting that they're locking people down so that they can't make a run on the bank?
Exactly.
Wow.
You know,
Well, then it
it's interesting
seems to me like we're
that-
following the absence of money.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting what Mary said, too. If we think back to the reporting that we did when there was the lockdowns in Shanghai, when the pandas were starving, and people were trying to buy things online and they couldn't because the internet was frozen, or the buy sites where you would get the commodities were all frozen, right? Because there was so much activity that the websites were locked up. So
Well, that's what they said.
that's what they said. So who knows if they just turned them off, right?
They just turned them off because there was no, when you went to your bank account to pull the money out to pay for stuff, there probably wasn't any money in there.
But if we tie that together with what Mary had mentioned, it starts to make a complete context.
No. You were locked up with millions of other Chinese people
Right.
in Shanghai. Your doors were bolted shut, screwed shut. You could not leave. You could not get to the bank.
No, we agree with that. That makes sense. So we're also saying is that you couldn't get to the bank through your smartphone either. I mean, you were locked out virtually and physically.
Exactly, yes. So follow the money, gentlemen, and I love your show. Keep it up.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mary.
it.
Thank you for the call.
831-479-1080. Okay, Billy, are you gloating because
I am.
somebody else?
Yeah. I am. Because, no, seriously, my grandfather said it to me from the time I was a little kid.
Yeah.
He was a CPA in San Francisco, and he said, if you want to know what's really going on, follow the money.
Oh, he'd know.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And Mary makes a really good point.
Yeah.
That I think a lot of people sort of forget, is the fact that, China is manipulating money left and right. I mean, they're now manipulating our hedge funds.
Well, I think that's what they're living on right now. I think they are living on the money that's coming into the country from our investment.
In exports.
Yeah, Black
because
Rock.
I don't think they're making any money right now. They're not making any money manufacturing.
Well, Michael, you bring up a really interesting idea. So, since Billy, what you've been talking about too is in Jonty's these companies are co-owned, public-private partnerships, right, with the CCP.
Yeah.
So the money that's pouring in, is it actually going into investment and product R&D and manufacturing, or is it actually just propping up?
Well, that's what I
empty
believe.
shell of a company?
I believe it's propping up the country.
Well, I think the
that-
real estate thing proved that.
Yeah.
So, if people like Larry Fink at BlackRock are, what they do is they collect money from all kinds of investment people.
Mm-hmm. They're aggregators.
They're aggregators. So they're collecting money from all over the country. They're bundling it and putting it into the funds and in China. Nobody has any touch of anything. And of course, we all know that Larry Fink, in giving China all this money, is given the opportunity to own the only foreign-owned mutual fund in China.
I've been thinking a lot about how Jonty thinks. And here's my conclusion.
You're in trouble, Billy.
I know I am. But here's the thing. I think Larry Fink I'm going to revise what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. I think Larry Fink has set himself up for extreme failure because China seems to always win.
Yeah.
But he's not set himself up for failure because it's not his money.
No, but if you're the aggregator, if you're the dude in charge of the aggregator and everybody...
So what do you lose?
Well, you might lose your life if enough people get mad.
Well, he certainly keeps the fees off the top for all of the managing of the money, and then if the pile goes sour, if the investors are out, he still has his fees.
He still has his castle in Switzerland.
You don't think some of those investors know where to find him?
Well, look, we got to keep in mind that when he's managing $10 trillion of other people's money, he's not investing all of that in China. The vast majority is not in China. It's really a paltry sum that's invested in China. Paltry to him. I think it's in the tens of billions of dollars. But that's
round off here in my checkbook.
That's not very much of 10 trillion. One of the games that
I would like to know how much he does have invested in China. Yeah. That would be interesting.
I think that mutual fund was something like $6 billion or something. I'd have to look that up. But yeah,
that's just the mutual fund.
That's
the big money is in the bonds, I would bet.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if part of this is coming from the Biden administration. He supposedly today, when he's meeting with the Saudis and the Israelis, he's talking about how we're going to make this really great peaceful region because he's going to bring the Iranians in to the fold and everybody's going to live well together. I mean, I'm wondering how much is this kinds of thinking is going on with the China policy, where it's like, hey, BlackRock, you need to put money in China. We need to get better integrated because the more integrated we are, the less chance there is that they'll...
Well, that was the whole concept for the Deng Xiaoping era.
It was, yes.
All we need to do is invest in China and we'll turn them into a strong Western country.
Bill Clinton said as much.
Yep.
And it did not work.
No, because they have other ideas.
Mm-hmm. Of course they have other ideas.
Always have had.
Yeah. And look, just to go back to the Middle East thing for a minute, have we heard any mention of, bringing the PLO in? Because let me tell you something, Israel's not going to be a happy place until they have some sort of an agreement or some sort of a way to deal with the PLO.
They're never going to get one because the PLO is kind of like a proxy for Iran.
Well, that's what I'm kind of saying.
Yeah. So... 831-479-1080. 831-479-1080.
All right, let's go to Nick in Royal Oaks. You're up next on China Watch Radio.
Hi, I got a question, but I also don't want you to keep your notes on the South China Sea. My question is, since the there's a shutdown in China, and let's see, the Chinese people, they pay the communist government rent, is that correct?
Say again?
Do the Chinese people pay the communist government for their rent?
Well, in some cases, they pay a company that's part of the Chinese government back. Yeah. So, I guess technically that's a valid statement.
And the Chinese government owns 100% of the land. If you've got any kind of a domicile, you're leasing it on top
of
the
land. Are these people liable for back payment? Have you heard anything about that?
As you know, that was the case. When things started falling apart and people said, I've got to get out of this because I can't afford it. Mm-hmm. They were stuck getting rid of the place. And if they had to sell it for half of what it was worth, they were liable for the other half. Now, I just read today, I think it was, that there was a wholesale abandonment of mortgages going on in China. And if such is the case, that we're looking at a significant collapse in the way things are.
Then there is ownership in China also.
Is there what?
Ownership?
No, you can't. What you own is a lease, a 75-year lease. That's it. Oh. And after 75 years, the property reverts to the government. So essentially, you have a long lease.
I see both sides stuck in rent. So thank you. Don't forget the South China Sea.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
831-479-1080.
Have either of you three folks lived in a place where the land was owned by an entity and you could only lease it?
Mexico.
No, Mexico, you can own land. But you just has to be more than 50 miles in from the coast.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I thought U.S. citizens could only own land in Mexico for 100 years.
No. My family has a house that's now ours. My sister and I have it with my dad. And it's because it's more than 50 miles in from the coast, you can own it without a Mexican citizen, and we own the house outright. Mm-hmm. But in Hawaii, there's some places in Hawaii where you can't own the land because it's owned by the Bishop Estate. You can lease it for 99 years.
Or
but you
by Zuckerberg.
Well, yeah. But, I mean, much of the property in Hawaii you can own outright. But there are some portions of some islands where you can't own it, but you can build a house and lease it for 99 years.
Well, I grew up in Minnesota, and there was huge swatches of land around northern Minnesota that are still owned by the Indian tribes, and so they were leasing spots for cabins and things.
Lands,
same type of deal.
I find it the concept
That's where all the coal and the
iron ore
and all the copper and gold and silver.
But I find that whole concept fascinating.
Yeah.
That you would put all this money into it and put all this work and toil into building up a nice piece of property, and you don't really ever own it.
That's right.
Well, look, we proudly say that we're allowed to own our own properties here, but I bought a place in 2017. You guys are welcome to help me out with my property taxes.
Oh no! Yeah, exactly.
And the
be paying
loopholes with regards to passing a house on to your own family are comical. The state's just hovering like a hawk. They want, they want some massive capital gains payment if you just to transfer a house within your family. So we kind of own our properties, but we're in a not too different scenario.
No. You make a very, very valid point. I mean, just the idea of a 30-year mortgage.
Render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, and everything is Caesar's.
On that note, let's take our first, our second break of the program today. Our first break.
Do we have somebody on the line? Oh boy,
we do. Dick in Santa Cruz. If you'll wait through the break, your call is coming right up.
479-1080.
Ramen and sushi you'll find waiting for you at Kaito. Easy in and out location in the Capitola Mall food court. Special orders welcome. Fresh, delicious, and oh so good.
This is Koji. I'm looking forward to seeing you at my restaurant, Kaito.
In the wee hours of the night, when everyone else is fast asleep, you're the one on third shift, burning the midnight oil. When a part fails and everything comes to a grinding halt, regardless of what the clock on the wall says, you leap into action. Grainger is with you and all the ones who get it done. With 24/7 customer support by phone or click to chat. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Primo Roofing is your full-service roofing company. They not only replace roofs, but maintain and preserve aging roofs with an entire division dedicated to postponing costly roof replacement. Their maintenance division specializes in pressure washing, coating and sealing, mold and mildew removal, gutter cleaning and replacement, preventative maintenance, and repairs. Maintenance is key to long roof life. Are you ready to protect your roof? Call Primo Roofing today, working to extend and preserve the life of your roof.
User-Friendly Computing is Santa Cruz County's top-rated IT service and solutions provider since 1993. Here's why. Service and repair, services management, cloud solutions, website design, backup recovery, and finally, security and compliance. There's only one place to go for all your computer and IT solutions. That's User-Friendly Computing, 505 River Street in Santa Cruz. Give Peter and his friendly staff a call at 831-423-9653.
This is Dave Michaels, here to let you know about the sale going on at the Dave Cave this week. Now, if you're the type of person who likes to hold the product, read the labels, shake the bottles, then this is the perfect time to stop by because you'll not only be able to do that, but you'll also be able to pick up a great deal on longevity products. When you stop by and purchase your Tangy Tangerine at regular price, you'll activate a 30% discount on any other product. Tangy Tangerine is not on sale, but everything else will be once you buy your Tangy Tangerine at regular price. This goes for original flavor, 2.0 tablets, and the all-new 2.5 tropical tangerine. Get your ultimate daily classic for problems with blood pressure, Arthrodex for your four-legged friends, Sweeties for blood sugar issues, Enzymes and Flora for better digestion, ProstFX for your prostate, the Brain and Heart Pack, Vision FX, Memory FX, and more while supplies last. The Dave Cave is at 2300 Portola Drive in Santa Cruz. The sale is happening this week, Monday through Friday from 12 till 7 p.m. Unfortunately, no credit cards can be accepted at this time.
Welcome back. This is China Watch Radio. I want you all to go to ChinaWatchRadio.com. Check out this story features we're working today, and consider them as you go to bed tonight. And good luck on getting a good night's sleep for that. Dave Welch, you got something?
Yeah. So I've got a buddy of mine who texted, Mad Mike from Gilroy. He had a question today when Biden got off Air Force One and he's walked down the stairs. Met by a young airman at the bottom of the stairs. He lost his way. And so she had to explain. He says, what am I doing? And she said, well, you have to follow the red carpet. And so I'm wondering so my question is, what does China think about this when they see this out in the open, in terms of us being a threat or any type of able to...
I think what China sees is profound weakness. Now, what do predators always look for? What does a predator look for when the predator's looking at
the slowest antelope?
Yeah. They always look for weakness. And that's what these Chinese people are pretty clever.
Well, it just looks like there's, if you don't have like clear thinking at the top, then you're left to the people underneath the cabinet to somehow drive a consensus, by a committee. And that just takes a long time to...
Well, I think in the White House it's a little faster.
Yeah.
Under normal circumstances, the cabinet people are pretty sharp.
I agree they're sharp.
But the point is right.
No, he's right.
If you don't have a decision maker, then you're forced to go with a consensus of some kind.
Which is an interesting point to make about the United States government right now. But think about what's going on in China, because he is trying to hold on to power. Mm-hmm. And he's locked down Shanghai.
He's just locked up everybody.
Yeah, well, you can't keep everybody locked up forever.
Well, it's through the election.
Yeah, but I mean...
he's also terminated a significant number of his potential competitors.
Yes, but I still don't think he's as omnipotent as he thinks.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, we've talked about the competing forces inside China that are riving for power with the convention coming up. I think it's November, right?
November.
Coming up, yeah. But it's interesting, it's also a rife opportunity for somebody to make a power play as well. And so do they see a president who maybe can't react fast enough or get a cabinet to react fast enough as an opportunity?
Because somebody was talking and mentioned the fact that the data breach that Jonty brought up today could well have been a data dump by an enemy of Xi Jinping.
Sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, David, I guess, has to leave. He's got something he has to take care of, so we'll say goodbye to you. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, gentlemen.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. We have Dick on the line.
We do, indeed. Dick's been waiting through
479-1080. Join us.
Hello, Dick. How you doing?
I missed some of your show. I'm sorry, but I had something I wanted to talk about. I'll listen to it, Mike. I promise.
You're going to go back and listen to it on our archive.
I promise.
Okay.
Don't get mad at me. Okay. So I just wanted to talk about, basically the arms race that's going on. I kind of sent you guys an email on that a while ago. But there's an update. The email I sent you was that we failed at Mach 6 at our hypersonic development, and now I guess we have something that does work from a large-scale bomber platform, and it goes Mach 6, hypersonic. It isn't evading; it just goes. So now, what are we up against with China? Just to take one, it's China and Russia are ahead of us. I hate to say, I don't know why nobody's talking about this. I mean, I guess there was some news about telling New Yorkers to get under their desks or go in their basement for an atomic attack. It was a public news service. So somebody's thinking about it, but our government certainly isn't. But as it stands right now, Russia has a Mach 27, avant-garde that can change course and altitude. It has a Satan 2 missile that I am not sure if its speed. I think it's like 10 or 11, and it goes. It can take out all of the UK and Wales in one missile. And then now China has glide. They have this orbital glide system that's just amazing, and they've had it since 2019, by the way, tested and everything. And it goes in low orbit underneath all the early U.S. warning systems and can release at any time. You know, and then they release their hypersonic that goes. I don't think it's 27, but it's like
Dick,
16 at least.
You're really being frightening here.
Dick, where are you getting the information? That's what I want to know.
Oh, several places. One of them is the Daily Mail.
They're very good with that. Yeah.
Dick, I have a minor correction. The Satan II rocket is it's not the one that takes out England and Wales. That's the Poseidon missile. That's actually a torpedo. Sorry, the Poseidon torpedo is a 100. Is it megaton? I forgot the unit of measure. It's a 100. I think it's megaton. 100 megaton. Now the biggest bomb previously, nuclear weapon previously detonated was 50. So now this thing's 100.
Yeah.
And
that's where we are.
the Russian state television actually did a report wherein they showed that detonating one of these Poseidon missiles in the Atlantic Ocean would create a tidal wave large enough that it would pass over the entirety of England and Wales. That would be underwater.
Do you remember when Mao Zedong was talking with somebody about, I think Stalin, about, or maybe it was Khrushchev. I think it was Khrushchev. And Mao was trying to get Khrushchev to help him develop the bomb. And Khrushchev was saying, you got to be careful with this stuff. You could accidentally set it off or, start a nuclear war with it. And Mao said, hey, it's okay. We can afford to lose a lot of people.
Oh yeah. That's what we're up against. Anyway, I suppose the Biden administration and all their ties with China can't do anything because they're completely controlled and blackmailed by China anyway. I mean, they probably have, not to mention more pictures about directly about his son, but more.
Well, wait a minute. How can you possibly blackmail Hunter Biden?
Right. Exactly.
Everybody in the world knows everything about
They're
Hunter.
Blackmailing us, essentially. They're blackmailing the U.S. government.
Well, I don't know how you can blackmail Hunter Biden into anything.
Everybody knows all of his bad secrets.
Yeah, everybody knows him.
Yeah. Well, that still isn't really. Nobody believes it. I mean, half the country doesn't. They still think it's fake, and they think Russian collusion was real. So that's what we're up against in this country.
I was really surprised yesterday. I was talking with a very well-educated person, but who is very busy. And he was talking about the January 6th committee hearings as if it were like the Watergate. And I just said, gee whiz, we've been having these hearings on Trump now for 4 years straight.
Yeah.
And nobody's ever found anything. I mean, is this really how you amuse yourself watching the January 6th committee? Wow.
Oh my gosh, I can imagine.
So, Dick, do you think that CCP would or would not assassinate Shinzo Abe? Abe.
Are you kidding? Yeah. No, I'm sorry. Yes, they would do in a blink of an eye. Yeah. Yes. They want full control of as much area as they can and influence. So any way they can do it, either buying with road and belt and buying, off countries and taking them over. Anyway, killing people. Like you said, you guys are right on. I mean, their biggest trouble right now is their economy and all their people. And so they've gone back to locking everybody up. And maybe that lady was right, lock them up so they can't run on the banks because I don't know, you guys probably covered that, but about they only have $1 for every $3 they promise people from the banks. So they don't have the money in the banks. So.
Yeah, there's no money in the bank. And it's hard. It's hard for them to print money. Because they're not the reserve currency, right?
Yeah, actually, that's they can. Yeah, no, they print money. Actually, what they are, that's the most frightening part of this whole discussion, is their economic instability. I mean, it's getting worse. You know, what happens in history, right? Every time there's countries don't go to war when they're doing well. And the economy and the trade and all that is doing well. So if we have another big lockdown and they're talking about it now, like what's the latest one they're talking about? It's they have a funny name for it. Jaguar. I don't know. There's another COVID coming out that they're telling us about. Get ready. So It's a world conspiracy, and I think China's right up at the top, designing it for whatever reason. But I guess they're getting ready for pending war. That's for sure. And Russia, I mean, with their, Putin saying that there's spies trying to steal his stuff.
Well, remember, Putin apparently isn't well, and I don't think he's thinking as clearly as he could.
That's dangerous. Yeah, that's dangerous too. And look at Joe. Look how danger we're in. I mean, they're afraid of Trump with a nuclear button. Joe could just roll over the bed and hit the nuclear button and say, "Hey, Jill, what was that?" I mean, we don't know what could happen. Anything could happen. So It's a scary time. It's a scary time, and I'm sorry I might have scared you, Mike.
You did. Not going to sleep tonight.
All right. Well, thanks for the call. We appreciate it.
Okay.
All right. Let's move on to Dawn in Prunedale. You're on China Watch Radio.
Good afternoon, China. I know this is about China, but you brought up Mexico and leases.
Yes.
I own property 600 some odd yards from Sierra Cortez, a large house. And I also own two other properties, one about 2 miles inland and one about 5 miles inland.
So now, is that from the ocean or from the inland?
Sea of Cortez.
Cortez.
Yeah, so you're more than 50 miles in from the ocean.
So it's ocean, so you can own. Okay.
Right?
I've got a question. How much property tax do you pay?
Oh, it's nothing in Mexico.
It's nothing. It's based on the size of your lot.
That's right.
It's nothing in China. So that's one of the things that made it such an attractive investment in China.
Uh-huh.
You could buy one of those concrete boxes in a skyscraper, and it would just appreciate, and you wouldn't have to pay taxes on it. It's not like here.
Well, our yearly expense for everything, including taxes, water, electricity, all that stuff, at my dad's place in Mexico is under $1,100 a year.
Wow.
Neat.
The leasing in China, I believe the law changed in 1997, was ratified and permanent in 1998, where Americans may own land next to the water.
In Mexico?
In Mexico. My wife even sold 2 lots that were less than 10 miles from the Sea of Cortez. I know that's not the ocean, but the ocean's not very far from there either. Baja's not very wide.
Yeah, it is. You're absolutely right about that. But also, I didn't know the law had changed. It's a widespread misconception that Americans can't own property in Mexico. It just used to be where it was located, but I guess now they've even fixed that.
Yes, they wanted more of us there.
Well, certainly they do. The little town where my father has his house in Mexico there's a lot of American and Canadian citizens who live there either full-time or for half the year, and they contribute greatly to the local economy.
Our town is 1/3 Canadian and U.S.
Okay, you two are gloating.
No,
all the rest of us are envious because we don't own land in Mexico now.
Yeah, and you should see my house. It's a 2-story.
And I love Mexico too.
Yeah, it's
3.5 bath, 3-car garage, 600.
See, he's gloating.
Because I'm on the
you're gloating.
16th tee box.
I will say this: it is the American real estate market has upped the prices in many places in Mexico now. So it's not how it used to be, but it's still better than some places.
There's some real nice homes for very affordable prices.
Indeed.
Thank you for the call.
Don,
and
thanks for the
making
call.
me feel real sad that I don't own property in Mexico.
Thanks for calling. You know, it's funny, though. There are places all over the world now where people are looking. In the United States, people are looking for the affordable places to live now, you know?
John, you ready to take your family to Mexico?
Yeah. It certainly seems like in terms of investments, there's might be some opportunities there. But I think we should talk about something having to do with China.
Absolutely.
Yes, I think so too.
Well, look, it's funny you should mention that because while Don was talking about Mexico, I'm thinking, the last place in the world right now I would want to move to and live, even if there was a really great high-paying job, is China. I just don't think that's a place I'd want to go right now. Not even as a tourist.
I always wanted to go, but I always realized that too much of a contrarian. And what hope is there for a contrarian in a place that demands absolute fealty?
So I've got something for you guys. One of the links in today's Know Before the Show article on China Watch Radio was to a China Uncensored video where they're talking about Beijing and the current coronavirus surge, supposed coronavirus surge in that area. Apparently, the governor of Beijing instituted a mandatory vaccine policy, which only lasted a little while. He ended up walking it back because the national policy is actually against that. Officially, in China, I find this interesting. Australia, Canada, New Zealand, just to start on the list. Federal employees here. There's all these mandated vaccines, but in authoritarian China, their official policy is we are not going to mandate vaccines. Now, I've seen video from China of people being held down and forcibly vaccinated, so I don't really know what that means, but I find it very interesting that they're actually not mandating vaccines over there. So what do you guys think's going on with that? Why not? You would expect them to be the first in line to do some kind of mandate.
John, I'm kind of curious to know what you think about Mary's idea that they're locking everybody down to keep them from going to the bank and getting their money.
They're not that locked down. There's a proportionality issue there. If everybody in China was locked down, then I'd say, yeah, that's plausible. But there's been brief lockdowns in certain areas. Brief for us, I guess, reading the news. If you're locked down for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, I think you're in living hell. But at any given time, I mean, I've at a wild guess over the past 3 months, there's been somewhere between 50 to 100 to even 10 million people under lockdown. This is in a country of we now find out 1.2 billion people. So it's not a large enough percentage of the population for me to really feel like that would affect the economic situation vis-a-vis runs on banks.
But when you lock them down, it does stop a run from a bank, that's for sure. And watching the protest at one of the big, huge banks in China, watching video of it, and watching the swarm of strong-arm plainclothes officers busted up.
Yeah.
Wow. And then right after they were done busting it up, they brought in a big tanker truck and hosed down the sidewalk and washed all the blood away. So they're very serious about, and I guess, if you're a paranoid Chinese Communist Party official and you're looking at, you know, 1 billion people who want their money, and you don't have any money.
Yeah.
That'd make you shake in your boots.
Well, look, anytime you have that many police officers show up and try to quell a run on the bank, I mean, that's like 1929 action, isn't it? You know, when the banks, you know, failed in the United States and the stock market crash. Yeah. I mean, you had people running on the banks, and we didn't have people being beat up outside the banks, but we had a whole lot of people trying to get their money.
Yeah, and especially knowing that the money isn't there anymore.
Well, yeah, exactly.
I saw a video of one of the corrupt officials. You know, whenever something goes wrong within the CCP, they round up a few people and execute them and say, "See, everything's fixed. We took care of this guy." But they had video from inside the guy's condominium. You know, he's living in a nice skyscraper condominium, and he had shelves and shelves and shelves of money and bundles, you know, yuan and dollars and $100 bills, you know, and walls of these shelves, and it was all stuffed with money. And he's one of the people that So, you know, where do you put your money if you're a hardworking Chinese person? You put it in a bank, and it goes into bundles in some, you know, Chi-Com officials' condominium or something.
Well, remember, back in a previous program on China Watch Radio, we were talking about the people who rob the rich guys, and they rob the rich guys because they're not going to tell that they have all this money.
They're not the rich guys; the officials.
Well, that's what I mean.
The communist officials. So
they're not going to report the robbery because they don't want anybody to know they were hoarding money in their house.
Who do we have?
Mark in Aptos.
Oh boy.
Mark, you're on China Watch Radio. Thanks for calling.
Hi, guys. Good show. So, yeah, I think you just said the answer to the reason why they're not mandating vaccines in China. It's money. It's expensive. So they're letting us do it and spend all our money on a vaccine mandates, and not necessarily in America, but in Canada, like you said, and Australia, New Zealand, and you know, whether it's mandated or not, the government is still handing them out, and they're spending tons of money on it. Mm-hmm. And if they're worried about a run on the bank, the last thing they want to do is mandate a vaccine for 1 billion people. You know.
Yeah, and the other thing is that China can't quite print money to the extent that we can, because the yuan is not a reserve currency, right?
And not only that, but if you know, he makes a very good point. The caller makes a great point. The fact that you know, if they can't afford to manufacture and hand out the vaccines to a large portion of their population, and they're running on the banks at the same time because they don't have enough money, maybe it's counterproductive to help people stay alive.
Who knows?
I gotta top off. I think they're going to let us go broke buying the vaccines, and then, you know, I think you were talking about this last week about China trying to move their currency forward into more of a currency for the world.
They're trying to set up a new reserve currency for the BRIC countries. Exactly.
And we're helping them do it with our you know.
Yeah.
Just yeah. All right, you guys.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for the call. We appreciate it. We're coming up near the end of our program. Got about 5 more minutes. Anything either one of you two guys wanted to get out there before we end the program today? Jonty?
Ask Olson first, and I'll have something when we come back to you.
Okay.
You know, here's what I would like to put on the table. I think that China has, as I've said many times, I think China has been at war with the United States for 20 years. And I think it sees that now is an opportune time for them to bring that war to the surface. You know, they've been pretty much doing it underground, fighting underground with elite capture and stealing stuff and whatnot. But I'm afraid that they're looking at their population, and they're seeing that if we're going to do something, we have to do it now. But I'm also seeing an economy that's in an apparent state of collapse. And I hate to say this, but I hope that's the case because
if they're trying to go to war right now, my take on it is I don't think they can get it done.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying I think their economy is in such a state of collapse right now that they probably couldn't, fund it.
Yeah.
Unless that depends on how much money Larry Fink of BlackRock wants to give them, though.
Well, the other thought though is the fact that with an aging population, and if China suddenly picked started a war with somebody. I'm not so sure they could force their population.
It's still young enough now, Billy. It's still young enough now, but that's why I have concerns.
Well, it's 3.5 million military personnel. That's the largest standing army in the world. The quality of those troops is questionable, but that's still certainly something to consider. There was that academic who was suggesting that armed unification with Taiwan will happen by 2027. I think that might be a nod of the hat to what you're describing vis-a-vis demographics. It ain't going to happen after that. Which again, that's been one of the arguments I've made, is that let's make sure that we don't provoke that conflict until after, give or take, 4 or 5 years from now, at which point in time China will never have the resources to be able to do it.
Yeah, good point. That's a very good point.
Well, and again, that's part of my hope. I hope that we can put that off until that time. And I hope we can put off more conversations about China until this time next week.
Sounds like a good idea.
When we will be back with China Watch Radio and with Billy Graff and Jonty Collier up there in the sticks and David Welch on the road. And
yourself?
My Michael Olson, yours truly. And what's this, a phone call coming in at the last second?
Yes, but I don't think we're going to make it. We're saying goodbye.
But we want to thank you all for joining us and helping us make this show your show. Really appreciate it.
And don't forget to head to our website to find out more about these articles. If you just joined us and you missed a good portion of the program today, it's all in articles on the website, ChinaWatchRadio.com. Jonty does a lot of work putting all that together, and we invite you to go check it out. Flight 1080 is on the way. Stay tuned for that fine program. It's coming right up after the news. This is AM 1080 KSCO Santa Cruz, Salinas, Monterey. Thanks for listening.